Cassandra, welcome to the podcast. Before you joined us, I was thinking, when was the first time we met? And I remember it was a few years ago at a dinner. And before I knew who you were, what your business was, I was like, this woman is so special and energetically. I think we exchanged like 4 words, not even a lot, but there was something that really stood out about you. And now that I know you as a person and as a friend, I'm like, you are this incredible woman. And I know I've been wanting you to come on the podcast for years. So this is exciting for me. I have a million questions and I can't wait for just so many women to understand all the impact you're making and learn so much about you. So, long winded way of saying thank you for being here. I'm super, super excited.
Thank you for having me. And I don't know, I just feel, it's so weird the idea of being on a podcast. Like for me, like having all this attention, it seems a little overwhelming, but it's a little out of my comfort zone. And thank you very much for the kind words. I actually wanted to say, I feel so similarly to you. Hearing and being a fan of your podcast and listening to all of these incredible women who you have on here, so successful, have done so many incredible things. There is this little part of me in the back of my mind that thinks like, well, what more could I offer? Like they've all said all the things, like like they all got it right. They said they've done all this stuff already. So anyway, I hope I can bring something.
And thank you for being, and this is why I love you so much, for you being so vulnerable and authentic, because I think a lot of women who listen in, they're like, they look at you, they're like, Cassandra's made it. She's built this successful business. She's thriving. And you still have moments of, how can I add value? Like a little bit
Yeah.
of imposter syndrome. And I want to call that out because everyone has that. And it's just you still showing up and doing the interview, despite you might think that, what else am I going to add? She's had all this other women. So I appreciate your vulnerability with that. And what I love so much about you, and I think is so unique from every woman that I've had on the podcast, is really your own personal journey. And let's just like jump into it right there, because I feel like I already, even as a friend, have millions of questions. But before we go into it, I know you as a person and I know how big, manifestation has played in your life and career for a very, very long time. So I love to start with a big picture question of, what are your beliefs around manifestation and what do you think its role is when it comes to creating success in your life?
Well, first, I want to say that I am a big believer in manifestation, but I think that manifestation is actually really intimidating. I think the word and the concept of it, there can actually be a lot of shame that's induced with this idea of like, hey, it's like a mother saying to a child, like, you can be whatever you want in life.
Mm.
And that puts a lot of pressure on somebody because if you don't become like, a billionaire or the most famous actress. Well, my mom told me I could be whatever I want in life. Like, what if I want to be, you know, um, you know, a, an artist, or what if I want, like, and I just, something really beautiful that's like really authentic to you, but maybe isn't recognized by a lot of people. And so, I think manifestation, just that word, has a lot of intimidation behind it. So I'm going to try and maybe express how I look at it. And I think, sometimes when people think like, oh, I'm manifestation, I want $1 million, or I want a new car, or they think these big things. But for me, I think it's more about setting micro intentions and maybe thinking about it that way. That has helped me in my journey and career and personal. And I really approach it in a way of like, I woke up today, I hope I have a great cup of coffee, or I'm setting an intention to have a great workout today. And when I leave, I want to feel energized and satisfied. And it's almost like if we could take these little segments of our day and put our attention on those smaller moments, and then we have success with them, then maybe you could start doing a week, like, okay, this week I hope to set, and it makes this idea of manifestation not so intimidating or shame inducing, that I'm not doing like the most incredible, amazing things. And it's also, it feels really good to just sit and set an intention. Like even for this podcast today, I said, well, what's my intention here? What do I hope to accomplish? And all of those fears of being like, well, what do I have to offer? What, like, okay, I've got to stop that, like, well, what could I do? I can remind myself that it takes people sometimes 7 times to hear something to really stick. Okay, well, maybe I can be the seventh time where something is, something is said and finally somebody hears it. Or, maybe my intention for this could be as simple as reminding someone to have gratitude of their past, or satisfaction for their present, or hope for the future, little things like that. And I think that that's how I manifest. Versus and I should say intention setting or living deliberately.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love this, Cassandra. I actually have not heard anybody talk about manifestation in that way of like micro intentions. And I love, love, love what you said, living deliberately. And I think you are a great example of that. And that's something that I'm still working through. Like, how do I set my day intentionally? Because the first 2.5 years of my business, I've just been in go mode. It hasn't been healthy, I will say, but it's gotten us to where we are. And now I'm like, okay, for me to be in this long game, I want to be happy in my life. I want to be happy in my business. So how do, like exactly what you said, how do I live intentionally so I can radiate with excitement and not burn myself out? Because this is a long game, which is, I look at you and you've been doing Kitsch for, gosh, has it been over 13 years?
Yeah, I'm on my 14th year of doing
Oh
this.
my
Yeah.
goodness.
It's
So yes, ladies, if you're listening, Cassandra knows what's up and I know the behind the scenes, but I do think you do live life intentionally and deliberately, which I think is great for anyone just to kind of be a little bit more thoughtful about that. So I love that. So before we go into Kitsch, I actually want to talk about the early days. What do I have to understand about your childhood to really understand the woman that's sitting in front of me today?
Well, I would like to think that I had the best childhood. And was it the perfect childhood? Absolutely not. But for me, it was the perfect childhood. And so I was born in Florida, in Boca Raton. I'm Colombian. My whole paternal side of my family lives in Colombia. But my parents got a divorce when I was 18 months old. And so my mom moved back to live with her sister in Minnesota. And the reason why I go all the way back to birth is because, I think by having a first generation parent and knowing that's part of who I am, like blood relative, and then but then growing up with a very American mother, it's something I've always interested. Oh, I'm Colombian, I'm like so proud of that. And but I grew up in Wisconsin. And so that's, it's a part of who I am, and I'm really proud of that. But the Wisconsin part is very interesting because growing up, my mom moved in with her sister, and that was the first 6 years of my life. Essentially, was my mom being a single mom of three, and we had such a strong bond. My mom and my two sisters and I, we were such a unit, and she got remarried when I was in first grade, and we moved to a very small town in Wisconsin. It was 2,000 people. And it was the most simple life. We caught frogs in the lake behind our house. We rode our bikes in the country roads, and my friends were the most amazing, real friends that I could have ever asked for. And there wasn't a lot of materialism, and there actually weren't a lot of choices. And I think that that was really interesting for me to grow up in that type of environment. And I'm actually really, really grateful for it. I think a lot of people, when they're young and they want to do, like, go to a big city, or they do this stuff, they think like, oh, I got to get out of here. And I was really, really grateful for that simple upbringing.
I love that. And one thing you mentioned right before you're going to your childhood, you're like, listen, we had ups and downs, but it was perfect for me. And I
Hmm.
look at you and you're someone that always looks at the glass half full, and you don't seem like a complainer. And I want to talk about, your, I believe it was high school and college. You really got into Wayne Dyer. So where did that come from? Like, where did this interest in personal growth? Because I look at you and I'm like, man, like you are so evolved and you can tell you've been doing the work for a long time. So where did that come from? This optimism for life and like need to just grow as a person so early in your life?
Thank you for those kind words. I'm definitely a work in progress. So I have such a thirst for self improvement. And I never want to assume that I know it all or anything. But I really remember in middle school, I had a gym teacher. I'm not very athletic, but I had a gym teacher, and I remember him saying, professional basketball players will close their eyes and visualize making free throws. And I remember that so like it was yesterday, and just being so amazed by this idea of mindset and how you can exercise by closing your eyes and how their ability to score more was increased by visualizing themselves making successful free throws. And I think that that was where I had this big pivot like, oh my gosh, my mind is so powerful. I may not be the most academic, but
Mm.
I could, and that's, I guess, where, and I didn't have the vocabulary for it at the time, where I really started to do intention setting and like, oh, I want to be the captain of my soccer team. I was not very good at soccer, but like visualizing myself, being a great cheerleader for the team and a good leader and a role model, like that's what got me to be the captain of the soccer team, and it's just simple things like that. It just really resonated with me when I was young, this idea like
Mhm.
maybe I wasn't, you know, great at something, but one thing I could do was control my thoughts. I actually really remember this quote that I heard, and it was like, we spend a lot of time and energy thinking about the food that we eat. We spend a lot of time and energy thinking about the clothes that we wear and what we're going to do for the day. But we don't spend enough time and energy thinking about the thoughts that we want to think. And I remember when I heard that, I was like, whoa, like you're right. I do spend a lot of time thinking about the clothes that I want to wear. Like I
Yeah.
remember thinking those things. I was like, what if I spent that same amount of time thinking about the thoughts that I want to be thinking and start telling myself different stories, whether they're real or not. So yeah, I loved it from a very early age. And I did the Esther and Jerry Hicks and Wayne Dyer. And lots and lots of, emotional freedom technique and all these things, even just from when I was in college.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you said auditing like what we want to think, because I think also sometimes we can have awareness of, oh gosh, like I'm having a difficult thought. I'm being self-critical on myself, but how do we replace that with a positive thought, right? And like
Mhm.
I just loved when you said like what we want to think and like putting in the right thoughts in our brains, because at least for me, I know I'm mindful of being difficult on myself, but am I really taking the time to replenish my brain with positive thoughts? I think I can do a better job there. So that just really resonated with me, and I love that it's been a part of your ethos for so long. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit so we can get into a bit of your story, but I know you ended up moving to LA and you didn't have any connections. You didn't have your family supporting you. Like you were hustling here to make ends meet. And in another interview, you mentioned that when you talk about this time period in your life, people kind of cringe about it. Tell me more about why you said that and what was really going on at that time period in your life.
Yeah, it's funny. It is a little, some things I think can be a little cringy. I think number one, door to door sales seems to be pretty cringy to people. This idea of, you know, driving around the city and lugging a suitcase and walking in and getting rejected, like that is very ego crushing. That whole concept is pretty cringy. Also, high schoolers. I was working at a cupcake shop, and these high schoolers would come in this like very wealthy neighborhood, I'd hear them talking about prom, and I'd be like, "Hey, I'll do your makeup for you." And I was just always kind of like trying to make a dollar babysitting. I didn't have an apartment for 6 months. And so I had my whole life in my car. that I think was an interesting time of my life. Thankfully, I had a lot of friends that would let me sleep on their couch. I have a sister that lived here, and she, even though it was like an hour away from my job, I definitely like, utilized that resource as much as I could. During that time, it was actually really funny, like even just like dating and not having a place for someone to pick you up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you know, I remember I went on a date and this guy was like, I'd love to send you some flowers. And I'm like, oh God, where do I have these flowers? So I was working at a cupcake shop at the time and I was like, oh, you can send it to my work. And I remember him kind of thinking that was strange. He didn't know that I didn't have an apartment at the time. And I remember him like being like, oh, the flowers are still here at the cupcake shop. And I just remember being like, yeah, I really like them. I enjoy them more at work since I spend so much time here. But stuff like that. I mean, it's just, but I was never down and out. And you said
Yeah.
this before, like I never had this idea of like poor me, everything, I'm such a victim or anything. I had some of the best memories during that time. I thought that like nothing happens to me, it happens for me. And it was just, it was a really actually fun part of my life.
I love that. Nothing happens to me, it happens for me. And I know at that time, like you were working a lot. Like you were working in that cupcake shop, you were doing makeup, like a bunch of things on the side. So there, I'm sure you weren't sleeping quite a bit, but how did you have such a positive mentality around all that? Because a lot of people would be like, this is stressful. I'm living in different people's homes, on my friends, I'm living out of my car. Like, how did you have a more positive aspect and not victimize yourself during that time? Because I think that's a really core quality in even running your business today.
I mean, that's a great question. I I had a car and I had a
That.
job. I had
Yeah.
a lot to be grateful for. I have been very fortunate. I lived in Thailand for a while. I know what
Easy.
real poverty looks like.
Mm.
And it's really hard to not appreciate having a job, having a mode of transportation. Even if I didn't have a car, I would have no problem taking the bus, asking, but they didn't even have Ubers back then. But
Yeah.
there was a time when I didn't have a car and I rode my bike everywhere in Los Angeles, which is terrifying, by the way,
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah.
Um,
Please no one
but
do that.
I think it's just a perspective. I think somebody could be like, my computer isn't new. I don't, I'm
Mhm.
so sad about it, or I'm just grateful I have computer. Who's really good at that mindset is Byron Katie. I don't know if you're familiar with her work. I love her work, and she has this great example that I think about all the time of like a mother getting really frustrated by having to pick up her children's socks. And every day she's like, oh, like what? Oh no, it was actually her story of saying, like, at first thought, like, I wish my kids would respect me more and pick up their own socks. Like, I have to do this. And she changed her mindset of being, I'm so grateful I have kids that I get to
Mm.
pick up socks for. And like
Mhm.
hearing somebody else be able to have just those little like segments of their day, the little
Mhm.
perspective shifts, I think helped me do that too. Other people's stories.
Yeah, I love that. And I was going to say, yeah, perspective is key in gratitude. And I would say gratitude is something that I hear all the time. And I know even like this I don't even know what day it was. Was it Monday? I know I texted you guys. We have a group chat where I was like actively involved in our manufacturing because, we were missing one person and I was in it. And by the end of the day, and I had all these plans for my day, I had a bunch of meetings, your day is completely
Oh
shifted.
yeah.
And and I definitely caught myself having like a victim personality for a second, like, gosh, like my day is shifted. And then I remember thinking to myself, how lucky that I get to do this, that I have customers buying our
Oh
product. So
my gosh.
anytime I see myself, because I can easily go into the victim mindset, like I'm very aware of that. I try to quickly shift it to your point. And I sent that video. I was like, laugh, guys. Like, this is fun. This is what I look like. I have seeds all over my body. My husband's like laughing. So it was just nice to kind of look at the positive side of it. So you doing that so early in your life, because starting a business, as we all know, like you cannot have an ego. You jump in, as Carissa said, our friend who's amazing, also like you punch in when you have to. So I just love that because you're epitome of, you know, being in the thick of things. And I think your early life before even starting a business really set you up for success because you didn't mind getting your hands dirty. You didn't mind doing every little thing. And I think if you want to be successful, you have to be okay with that. It is not glamorous behind the scenes.
You know what? It's even more than not glamorous. It can be like, I don't know what the word I want to use is because I want to be gentle here, but it can be humiliating. And like, like if somebody were to ask you like, oh, what did you do for the day? You'd be like, well, let me lay it out on the table. Because you make a lot of mistakes. Like it's not just about punching in and punching out. Sometimes you have to clean up a mistake that you make. And that is like really humbling.
Yes.
And yeah, you just got to keep on going. By the way, I loved that. When you sent that video of you with seeds all over you, my first thought was she's living the dream. She's
Oh,
living the dream. Like this is something so many people dream of, is having a brand and getting to really be part of it. You're doing amazing. So
no, I so appreciate that. I literally have goosebumps. And I remember I had thrown an event and you had come to, it was like a poker event maybe last year, and so many women. I just thought this was fascinating. I don't know if I've ever talked about it on the podcast yet, but there's a lot of women, including you, who are far along their journey. They've been doing it for many years. And I remember there was three women who pulled me aside and they're like, asking me, how's Bia? How's everything? And in that time, like I'm in the weeds. We're so early in the brand. And they're like, you know what, Yasmin, that's like one of the most fun times. Like
yeah.
really cherish it because as you get bigger, the demands are different. Not that they're not enjoying it, but like it's a very special moment. And going back to what you said about perspective, because anyone who's listening, it's a lot of women earlier in their entrepreneurship journey. Like it's tough. We're trying to figure out how we stay inspired. You get a lot of rejections. It's just part of the journey. And hearing women tell me like, this is a magical time, and also like it's just a great perspective shift. So hopefully that helps anyone listening, because it's so beautiful. But I want to go to, it seems like you moved to LA. You didn't have your own business at the time, but you seem to be very entrepreneurial. I actually did not know this about you until I did prep, but I believe you had like 7 other business ideas before Kitsch. But tell me more, like, did you want to start a business, and what were those other ideas that you were dabbling with?
I actually did have a business when I moved to Los Angeles.
Oh,
So my mom and I had started when I was my early years of college. My mom started a small boutique. So my grandparents were retailers, and my mom and my stepdad had an orthodontic practice together, and so very entrepreneurial, multiple generations. And my mom was like, I want to start a boutique. And so I was so fortunate to be able to go to trade shows with her and help, to do this boutique with her from the very beginning. And so that was like the first business that I was really able to like get some awareness, of how to staff. And I was so young during that time. And then we started a jewelry business together, and that's when I started doing like door-to-door sales and shipping and purchase orders and doing the wholesale side of it. We were sourcing semi-precious jewelry from India, and so it
mhm.
was so cool. We were going to India multiple times a year,
Oh, fun.
and going to trade shows there. But then it was like, we had a really, really hard time. I didn't have an MBA. You don't need an MBA to have a business, by the way. The only thing we knew how to do was hustle. That's it. We didn't know strategy. We didn't know. It was like, if you want sales, you got to go out and get them. You need to act. And so door to door sales was the only way. And so I exhausted all the shops here in Wisconsin, and so I would fly out to Los Angeles and I would do flea markets. And I showed at the Rose Bowl, and like, so I mean, I had all of these experiences of action oriented, like boots on the ground sales strategy. And then when I moved out here and trying to make ends meet, I started a spray tan business. I started a scarf business with inspirational quotes, all with different
I
business
love
names.
that.
Like it was just like I always just kept trying and trying, and then finally I started, and I think when I started Kitsch, I think I had like another business at the same time. So then I just realized, okay, this one's working. I'm going to hyper focus on this one.
Yeah, oh my gosh, and I love that. I actually did not know that you had worked with your mom. Like, what an incredible experience to see, like, the realities of business and what you said about you guys didn't know strategy, you just outworked and you hustled to get it, and I think my entire life has been that. I've never been the smartest person in the room. Like, I remember I was working in investment banking, the HR guy asked me straight up in the interview, "You didn't go to an Ivy League. Why should we hire you?" So, I love that because you can outwork anyone, right? And it's not about where you went to school, if you went to school, if you went to grad school, like at the end of the day, it's all about like life experiences and are you willing to put yourself on the line and hard work and hustle. So it's so cool to see that you've had that so early on and you were still trying to like dabble and make money in different ways because you had to in LA, like you were trying to make ends meet. So I love that. So tell me about Kitsch. Like, what was it? What was the thought process behind it? And how did you know, like, this is it? Like, this is going to be my thing?
Um, I think it's because Kitsch is going on its 14th year. In hindsight, I'm able to say, because sometimes you meet with the founder and they've got this like perfectly choreographed origin story. And I can say, number one, I do not have that. Kitsch was all about organic growth. It was,
Love
I
that.
made a product that I could hand make one by one, go out there, do what I knew, which was door to door sales, and slowly build business that way by single order. But I think what differentiated me than maybe some others, I don't know, was I was really listening. I mean, we had so many reorders off the bat and I bootstrapped Kitsch. So I every time I'd make an order, sell it, go reinvest, and I kept doing that. But the difference, I think, that I was listening to the customer and the customer was saying like, wow, these are so much better for my hair. And it was these little comments that I was like, okay, interesting. A hair accessory that's better for your hair. What if I could create essentially a lifestyle brand about hair care that's not shampoo and conditioner all the times of your day that touch your hair or you're interacting with your hair when you sleep, when you wash your face? And what if I curated a collection of accessories that supported a healthy hair care routine? And I didn't really come up with that idea. The customers told me that, and I followed her. She was like, what else can you make? And so, you know, I would love to say like it was very much a business plan with a specific growth trajectory of, 3 to 5 year. There's none of that. It was like, okay, let me listen to what you're wanting and needing, or let me see what your routine looks like and how can I improve that. And it was just a very slow build. And the other thing too is I didn't even know I could get an investor. I didn't even know that this was even an option for me. I was just there making products, doing what I loved every day. And that's, I think, how I was able to bootstrap the business. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love this. And what I think is so amazing is that you mentioning you just really follow the customer and we're putting in the work every day of what you love because sometimes I will meet with different entrepreneurs and this is something that I think a lot about actually. They have the whole year planned. And I think that works for some people and I have these high level goals, but similar to you, I feel like I'm more so just showing up every day, trying to do the best I can, give incredible customer service. And sometimes I kind of get hard on myself of like, okay, I don't have those specific goals and details. I have ideas, but it's like the business is kind of guiding me towards it. And so far, it's worked well for us. And I am just sharing that because I know before I started BIA and I started my own business, I always felt like we had to have it all figured out. And so hearing stories like yours makes it more approachable to start something because you don't have that intense pressure on yourself and you don't know how the business will flourish when you just show up every day and like you said, like listen to the customers and just iterate. And so that's so amazing that you were creating these. Your first product were the hair ties from your home. So tell me more about, you mentioned you bootstrapped it. Like, what did that actually look like, right? Were you working another job to kind of finance that? Like, did you have an apartment at the time? Were you still living out of your car? Like, what did your finances look like when you were working on this business?
Yeah. So I saved up $30,000 before I actually quit my job and started this. I did have other jobs on the side, but they were complementary to what I was doing. And so one of the jobs was I was doing private label jewelry manufacturing. And so I would make one piece of jewelry and I'd show it to a buyer and I'd say, do you want to put your logo, your brand on this piece of jewelry? Because most of my experience was in jewelry from my business with my mom and a previous company that I'd worked for. And a lot of that was able to be filtered into Kitsch. But I made a lot of relationships that way. Not a lot of sales happened that way, but I met buyers and I read vendor manuals and I understood how to sell and manufacture a product at scale from those opportunities. And so then I took those learnings and I started to build the foundation of Kitsch through that private label jewelry manufacturing experience. Um, I was extremely responsible, and everybody always talks about, like, oh, I want to be an overnight success. I am so grateful I wasn't, because I was so able. I would make a product and then somebody would be like, oh, the size is too small. And I'd be like, okay. And I'd go back and I'd make it a little bit bigger. And I was the little orders every day and the feedback every day, I was able to modify. I've changed my logo 4 times, I think. I mean, it was like, I don't even have like a branding guide at this point because, well, we're working on one right now, finally. But it's one of those things like, I just don't think we have to have it all figured out, because sometimes you're working through it with the customer and she's helping you and guiding you. You know, it can happen organically and slowly, and it actually feels a lot more authentic. You know, I can say this 14 years later. I know exactly how you feel right now, that you feel like you have to have it figured out. But Tony Robbins talks about how people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 5. And so let's drop the year thing. It's intimidating, you know. Let's start taking smaller steps and having a little more satisfaction in making the best product you possibly can today.
Ugh, I want to just take your story. I'm just so excited about this because I'm very passionate about putting stories like yours out there in terms of, self-funded, it's slow and steady, you're working in like decades. I love, for example, like your story, Mary Ruth, Carissa Bodner, like these are all women who are similar to you. And I'm not knocking on everyone else on my podcast. They're all special in their own ways. But like I
Absolutely.
love the slow and steady and the organic growth because it really resonates with me and how I want to build. So this gets me so excited and I get lit up hearing stories like yours because I think it's very approachable in how to build something. And it was interesting. I was actually talking to my mom before this podcast, and she's so sweet. She listens to my episodes. And her question, which is so funny, I'm like, I wonder if I got this from her. She's always like, but Yasmin, like, you need to dig it. Like, ask them, how did they like get their first few orders? Like, get into the weeds. And, I'm like, Mom, I don't have 3 hours, but like, that's a good question. And I think I'm like, you're going to love this episode with Cassandra because you are just showing like you would just sell it initially door to door trade shows and just take it one step at a time. And the success comes over years. We see your story now, but it's like 14 years of you building this. So I think that's just really special. But going to my mom's question, I know you got into a lot of retailers, right? And a lot of people might be like, okay, maybe she knew someone that she got into like these larger retailers, but you had no one. So tell me more about how you created these opportunities for you. Because on paper, people might think, oh, Cassandra got it all figured out. Like her business just blew up so quickly. But give us the real behind the scenes of that.
When I first started making the hair elastics, I didn't have any marketing dollars behind my brand. And I had experience doing private label. And I think one of the things that I did was I was making a product that people wanted, and everybody just wanted it private label. And so that it was a little heartbreaking because I knew that that wasn't going to give me, brand recognition or help me build what I was trying to build. But because I was bootstrapped, I was like, okay, if I agree to this one order, that's X amount of dollars in my bank account that I can invest and, from one retailer. So let me take a step back. In order to get in front of specific buyers, I thought about like, okay, they're not going to probably answer from my cold calls or emails, which I did. That's actually how I got into Ulta. But But I said, okay, well, how can I position myself? And so with the trade shows, I found a showroom that sold brands that I knew were already in the retailers I wanted to be in. So I went to that showroom and I said, hey, I can't afford to be here. But what I can do is I can work for you for free. I will go and I'll stand in your booth and I will travel and I'll pay my own travel. I'll do all of this stuff. As long as you give me the tiniest little corner, I will sell everybody else's brand as if it were my own, but give me this little corner. And, at the end, if I can show the buyers my stuff, that would be great. So I just got creative in ways in which I could get in front of those buyers. And it wasn't like major buyers until at the end of my first year where I actually got like a substantial purchase order. But just those little ones that really helped to give me the feedback, make it better. And then when the bigger one came along, I already had a refined product.
I love that. Such a creative way. And how did you get that your first larger purchase order?
So that came through one of those trade shows. There's two opportunities. One, I got it in a totally unexpected way. It was Nordstrom Kids. And I was like, I'm trying to be like a cool, like 25 something, whatever. I'll take this order. Super grateful for it. I made that whole order out of my apartment. And I had like a LTL, a less than truckload truck come up to the apartment. I had to load the boxes out. It was like a whole thing. But I think that opportunity came through one of those trade shows, and it just wasn't what I was expecting. But I do remember that was a $13,000 order. I remember walking to the bank with my husband, who's my business partner, and we were hand in hand walking our dog, and we went to cash that check, and we both just cried. We both
Wow.
just cried because it was like, we've made it. And, I think it was like one of those days where it didn't come in any way that I thought it was going to come. I had this idea of it, oh, it's Urban Outfitters or, something like that I really wanted to be at, but it was Nordstrom Kids. And Nordstrom Kids gave me that first big check to help me pay off my credit card. And was really grateful for it.
Oh my gosh. And I'm so curious because I know, we started this podcast about you talking about how you were very intentional. And I'm sure as you were building Kitsch, you were very intentional about visualizing and, wanting to get into certain retailers. So did any of those really come to life? Like and the reason why I'm asking is that I had another woman on the podcast and she's a big believer in similar to you, like visualizing. And when I asked her, what are some things that came to life? She couldn't stop giving me examples. And after that, I'm like, all right, I'm doing it. Vision boarding. I know me and you text about it. Like I am all in. So tell me more about maybe like those early days where you kind of wrote down certain intentions and maybe a few that kind of came to life if you feel like that resonates with your experience.
I mean, every single retailer that I've ever written down that I wanted to be in, I was in. There was not one we were even in Barney's. Like we did everything. The interesting thing, and how I've gotten more intentional about that strategy is just because you put a retailer on your list doesn't mean it's a healthy retailer who's actually going to help you grow as a brand. And I learned that the hard way because I had a retailer on my list. And at the end of the partnership, I actually ended up having to write them a check. And
Oh,
so,
wow.
I think I've changed the way, and this is just years of, again, not manifesting, but intentionally thinking about the outcomes rather than, like the sell in rather than this, and now I'm thinking more about the sell through aspect of it. But so rather than saying like, oh, I'll continue to just use Nordstrom. I want to be in Nordstrom. I say, I want to be in the retailers that represent me perfectly, where I can profit and have healthy relationships with. I want to be the number one brand in a retail, and so then I'll just keep like refining that statement so that I know at the end, if that were to manifest or when that manifests, I've I've cleaned it up. So it's not just like, I want to be in this retailer and then the retailer goes bankrupt.
Love that. That's a great, and I love the broadening of it and you knowing kind of like the importance of what you're looking for in a retailer. I'm curious, where does that thought live? Do you write it down? Is it intention you think about daily? I mean, that might be too much, but where does that live?
So that's a great question. I do vision boarding and I do that every year. I put it on my screensaver. I know you're asking specifically about retailers, but I've kind of like gone away from, I'm going to just say in general. And again, I feel very intentional about, I feel very insistent about it's the day to day smaller acts that we do that help with the bigger picture. I have an alarm that goes off on my phone 3 times a day. And it reminds me of the person I want to be, how I want to show up in the world, has like characteristic traits and like, what am I trying to do every day? And it starts at 8, 2, and 9 o'clock at night. And so like those alarms are reminding me like, okay, we're on a path here. I do the vision boarding. And then one of the other things that I really love to do is I do future journaling. And this one I do when I'm feeling a little anxious, where, I even have journal entries of years ago of me saying, we got into Ulta and I'm so excited and the customer loves
Mm,
us there and they look for us. And I write a journal entry as if it already happened from the future. And I know that's not a revolutionary thing, because I think a lot of people do that now, which is incredible. But it's just one thing that I've been doing for years, and it just helped me to calm down, and actually think about what I want the outcome to be, rather than what what we may perceive as the first step. Not thinking about it all the way through to the end versus just getting in.
future journaling might seem common, but it's actually, I would say, not as common as you would think. Like I've heard about it. I still haven't done it, but I could imagine. I love that you said that's something you tap into if you're feeling anxious or fears. And I think sometimes in business, whether it's a conversation or a big meeting, I mean, there's so many things that can impact that. So I could imagine you writing it in a positive way that kind of makes you feel a little bit like self assured and calms you. So I will definitely try that. That sounds really powerful.
I actually do that. And I think one of the other things that feels really great is doing that for friends. So, like, one of my friends, she's a director, and like sending her an email of being like, dear so and so, you did an amazing job. You're going to win an award. And I send her an email as if she got it, and like playing with that with your friends too. And it's a
Wow.
very like, and it feels really good for yourself. And then, like letting your friends know too that like, you know, I'm hoping for this for you as well. And that like altruistic approach
Mhm.
is, I don't know. I think it's very fun.
That's powerful. I love it. And do you ever send these emails to yourself? Yeah, because
I
I'm like, all
do.
right, I don't
Yeah.
know what friend's game. I want an email like today. Like, do I just send it to like what have you
Yeah,
done?
yeah. I
Yeah.
send it to yourself. Oh, congratulations! You just got in. Here's your purchase order, and
Yeah.
you can ship it in 3 months. Do it's all about playing a game.
Oh, I love
We can
that.
have a lot more fun.
Yes. Oh, this is amazing. And your the alarm that you mentioned, the 8 a.m., 2 p.m., 9 p.m., is that a specific app or is it like literally just your alarm you set up?
It's just the Apple alarm. Like it
Yeah.
goes off on my watch if my phone isn't nearby, and it has like, and I change it every so often. I have like 4 or 5, just, almost like my own personal mission statement, or like,
Yeah.
my strategic goals for myself or something.
Mhm.
And it's just, bullet points. Here's how I want to show up every day. And they're not, it's more of like an emotion rather than it is,
Ooh, I
like
love
I
that.
want to be a millionaire or something like that.
Mhm.
It's an emotion of how I want to feel.
Oh my, I'm literally taking a million notes right now. I love that. Cause I've tried different apps and that like trigger messaging, but then I'll get the message and it's nice, but it doesn't like deliver that emotion for me specifically. So I love that you just use the Apple alarm. You can make notes in there. I've done that before. So finding something that really resonates with you sounds so simple, but I actually think that's very strong. So I love that. And I love, again, like the whole theme of this podcast, I feel like, are like micro habits, micro intentions to create the life you want, which I think is so powerful and not talked enough about. But, one thing you mentioned also in another podcast is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you consider yourself sometimes like an introvert. And I think that's so interesting because, you talk about, when you were doing door to door sales back in the day and then cold calling and emailing. So you mentioned Ulta came from like a cold call and email. So how did you get out of that introvertness and really close that account? Because I don't think you hear stories like that too often.
That's such a good question. You are excellent at this, by the way. I think there's a difference between being an introvert and maybe what people perceive that as. Um, I don't love like huge social settings. I do love talking about one on one what I'm passionate about. And I love talking about my business with somebody who is interested in hearing about my business. And talking about me personally maybe isn't, I think they say statistically to most people, there's no sweeter sound than the sound of your own voice. And that's why people love to talk. But like, I definitely, this is not my comfort zone because I don't ever want to claim that I'm an expert at something because I really genuinely feel like I'm a constant learner of life. But
Mhm.
when it comes to rejection, that's very different. You can be an extrovert and be terrified of rejection and or an introvert, but I'm just not. I think door-to-door sales and selling product, I don't think you have to be an extrovert. You have to be a good listener. You need to be resilient, and you just need to be, persistent. And I don't think that has anything to do with, introvert, extrovert. Being a good listener, I think is probably the hardest of all of them. And I think listening to the customer was a big key to Kitsch's growth.
I love that. And I think you mentioning that you're a good listener, you're also, it seems like from listening to other interviews you've done, like you're very intentional with the relationship. So, whether it's Ulta or something else, like I could imagine that is maybe a superpower of yours to be very thoughtful and think about the other person. Because to your point, people are always just talking about themselves and what works for the business. But I'd be curious, like, as you're thinking about partnerships, like, is your perspective around how can I add value to, let's say, like that Ulta cold call, or it could be another retailer? Like, how do you think about that?
I mean, the first step is you need to know what their wants and needs are. Like,
Yeah.
and going in and trying to sell them, your product, and it has not even aligned with any of their wants and needs, you're going to fail. And
Yeah.
so getting a clear understanding of what are their intentions of what they want to do, but also taking this perspective of having it be a mutual relationship. I always say, like, my hope for this partnership is at the end you get a promotion, because
Mhm.
if you get a promotion by bringing kitchen and we sell well, like we made magic together. So I think just thinking it not just about Kitsch getting a purchase order, but like if we do a really good job and that person gets a promotion, like we're bonded, like that's, it's so much bigger than just not only that. And then if the customer, so this is how I would think about it. So before I go into a meeting, I'd say, okay, what's the company that I'm trying to sell to? What's their goals? Okay, if their goals are, simplifying the category and doing X, Y, and Z, I'm going to make sure I'm going to tell them how Kitsch can do that for them. And then the next step is what's your goal as a buyer? And you're like, oh, are you looking to move up the ladder? Like, how can I help you? What are your difficulties? Oh, people aren't responding to her. Okay, I'm going to make sure every week I send a follow-up email so that she's very clear on like what's happening, because I hear that, like people not responding to her and getting her the things she needs on time. So that would be another thing that I would implement for this team, knowing that that's something that she, is expressed as difficult. And then the third part, I would say, okay, I would like to feel great at the end of the year that we had this incredible partnership to the point where maybe she gets a raise. And then I would take it even step further and I would say, the customer was so happy when she purchased product that now she's devoted to this retailer because she had such a great experience. She's going to come back
Wow.
3 more times this year. And so I tell myself these stories, whether or not they're true, I play it all the way through. And I think about all of the people that could be positively impacted by the hair tie that I made. So I know it's so simple because it's just a hair tie, but I don't know. I think about the impact that it could make. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, and I love how clear like, me even asking you that question, you were so clear about the thoughts that went in your head. I just think that's so interesting to see how you think through it and so powerful, so thank you for even, like, walking through all that, and I also remember another interview you were talking about, and I just thought this was fascinating, that I think it was maybe at one of your warehouses or co-packers, but, like, you were walking down the aisle and you were, like, spraying maybe, like, some type of scent, and you were just kind of, like, visualizing or giving, like, I don't wanna say a prayer, just, like, good juju to it. I know that I don't even know if you remember saying that, but I was just like, "That's so nice." Like, you were just, like, giving good thoughts to your product. Like, when I was at
Yeah.
manufacturing, I was like, "This is made with love, and I hope that the person who gets it realizes that, like, there's a lot of care behind it." And that mentality and that thought came from me
Mhm.
listening to you saying that in a podcast. So it sounds so simple, but I just again think like these micro thoughts are so healthy and just fun for you. Like you said, it's kind of like
It's
a game.
so fun. It feels
Yeah.
good too.
Yeah.
Like I did do that. I mean, we do our own warehousing and fulfillment in downtown Los Angeles, but when I was working next to the product, which was not a long time ago, I would walk through the warehouse and I would like put my hand on a box and I would think like, oh my gosh, someone's going to buy this product. And how cool is that I get to connect with them? And I would think about how special that, butterfly effect is. And
Mhm.
I would hope, and I just would hope like, oh, I hope they really love this. So yeah, thank you for reminding me about that. I forgot that I used to do that.
I love it. I love it so much. So I'm curious, over the past 14 years, I'm sure there's been many, many ups and downs, but would you be open to sharing maybe like one of the most hardest moments you've had and kind of how you've overcome it, whether it was like personally within Kitsch or professionally, but it's always interesting to kind of hear.
Yeah, I think the hardest time for me was becoming a mother. I think for a long time I had a major identity crisis. I really bring as much as I can to everything that I do. And you know, when you become a mom, like even in business, like you can read all the business books and get pointers and tips and strategy and try it out. Um, and when you become a mother, I think you're working with the little infant who can't verbally tell you what their experience is. And so there is no reciprocation of it being like, hey, I like that. I don't like that. You have to be so slow and learn from nonverbal cues how their experience is. And in order to be that slow and present, you have to put everything away. And I wasn't in a place to do that. I wasn't in a place where I could hold space for this little teeny being to, tell me their wants and needs, non-verbally in a healthy way because I was trying to build this business and, make ends meet and it was really hard. And what I realized, and this goes back to my favorite author Byron Katie talking, as I'm saying this, and she I love this thing where she talks about turning it around. I couldn't hold space for my daughter because I couldn't hold space for myself. I was constantly, and I think about this a lot with Kitsch. I was so customer centric and loving that customer so much and being very much a people pleaser
Mhm.
that when I became a mother, it was like, okay, I need to learn how to set boundaries. I need to learn how to, listen without trying to fix because sometimes when it comes to like, a friend or like a baby, it's like
Yeah.
you have to set the boundary and then hear them say, I don't like the boundary that you set. and still be okay with setting the boundary. And
Mm,
that was really difficult for me to figure that out. It took me years. I had postpartum anxiety. I was like, I don't understand how I can't be good at this. I read all the books. Like I should have this figured out. I did it with business. Why can't I do this with being a
mm,
mother? And so that was really, really hard for me. And I think it permeated the business in a sense too, where I think there was a good 3 years where my husband really had to step in. He had to really help out because I just like, and I didn't know to name it at the time that I had postpartum anxiety.
sure.
I was so overwhelmed. I didn't, I wouldn't even recognize myself in that time. And again, like I look back at it and I think like I'm so thankful that I had that experience, because if I wouldn't have to try to continue through life without being able to hold healthy boundaries with people to this stage, I am so much
Mm,
happier. I have the
wow.
most beautifully authentic friendships, relationships with my family, my daughter and I. We have so much respect for each other. I would not have had that if I didn't show up for that anxiety and then accept it and work with it. And it was really hard. I have so much empathy for working moms. It is it's really a lot. And we do not, I don't think as a society, I don't think we talk enough about postpartum anxiety enough. It's just really, it's really hard. It's crippling actually. And I think it's really normal. I think it's a really normal thing, to not have it all worked out and to not feel like yourself, and to just want to cry every moment of the day. And so I would love to, if there's anyone out there that is
Mhm,
feeling that I know I have an employee that expressed to me, then I was like, you just keep talking about it, keep talking
mhm.
about it. So just don't think you're alone. So I think that was probably the hardest time for me.
No, and I appreciate you opening up and just being so real about that moment. And, you mentioned it took a few years, but what really helped you if someone's going through that? I don't have a kid yet, but like, I'm like, all right, what do I need to start thinking about? And of course, like you said, you read all the books. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I'll personally even learn when I'm in it. But what really helped you during that time? You mentioned boundaries was one thing, but anything else that kind of helped you get over that difficult hump and that anxiety?
I think I was really willing to change. And I think that was probably the reason why I was able to like make it through. Is I was like, well, why is this bothering me so
Mm,
much? Why is the noise of a cry so hard for me? Oh, it's because I don't like crying. Like
wow. Yeah.
why is it so hard for me to draw this boundary? Because I want her to like me. Okay, well, why? Let's work on that. Some like actual tools that I did is I started doing meditation. And there's so many different kinds of meditation. I know that that's another one that's really overwhelming to people. There's really fun ones that you can do. I did something called clairvoyant meditation. I know the word clairvoyance sounds like I've got a crystal ball and things are very metaphysical, but it was very much just like there's no chanting or anything like that. We closed our eyes and just did like, essentially like body scans and visualizing our space, and, doing more like an active meditation. Stuff like
Yeah.
that really helped me
Mhm.
feel grounded and back to myself again, and not so insecure and I had to be perfect and have all the answers. That actually I think was an emotional freedom technique. I remember driving in my car to work downtown, and I'd be like in my car and I'd be like, it's gonna be an amazing day. It's gonna be great. Everything's perfect, and like just like crying, doing the tapping and listening to motivational, stuff in the car. And it was just, again, it was day by day. It wasn't like something
Sure.
like, oh, okay, I'm gonna get over this tomorrow. I just gave
Mhm.
myself the time to actually like process it. I didn't talk to my mom for 3 years. Like it was like I had to do it alone,
Mm.
and nobody else could help me through it but myself. So
Wow, it's so powerful to think. I mean, I don't have a kid, so I don't know that emotion, but even with the business, like, it uncovers parts of you that you didn't even know you had. So I can imagine having a kid that takes it to a whole other level, and you giving those examples of the stuff that you needed to personally work on is just so interesting, and I'm sure a roller coaster of a ride, but for all the best reasons. So that's so beautiful.
It made me, I mean, not that it all comes back to business, but it made me way more empathetic. It made me such a better listener. It made me such a better business owner. Again, nothing happens to you, it happens for you. And that definitely happened for me.
Oh my gosh, I love it. No, thank you for sharing that. And, I'm curious, how has your definition of success changed over the years from pre-kitsch to now in the position that you are today?
That's such a great question. I've always felt successful. I even when I was like in middle school and signing yearbooks, like I always felt I remember being like, keep my I was like so egotistical. Keep my signature, it'll be worth something
I
someday.
love
Like
it.
I mean like literally like probably like a C average student. Like there was no promise on, in middle school. But I just always just deep down inside, I always felt like success. And I didn't know how to articulate that, but I just felt it. And so, when I was making that hair tie and I would get that small hair salon or a boutique, that's the same level of success that I feel today. I don't know how I would define it. It's a feeling. It's not a physical. It's not something that is manifested physically for me. It's just, I have this quote that I even put in our packaging and our boxes, and it's like, the secret to having it all is knowing you already do. And I think deep down inside, even in middle school, I knew I had it all. Even in that very moment, just because I could think a certain way.
That's so powerful. And I'm curious, I feel like a lot of people before they start a business are like, you know what, I can't wait till we make a million. And then that number keeps changing. And I'm curious, as someone who clearly has a very significantly, you have quite a large business, have you ever had those milestones for yourself? And how do you think about like revenue numbers now?
I flip flop a lot for this because
Mhm.
sometimes I'll tell myself the story that it's important. And then other times I tell myself, well, I get to do what I love every day, and that's the
Yeah,
most important thing. So of course in the last like 5 years, we started making projections and starting like, to put numbers down to try and like, because being a founder and just trying to pay your bills is one stage. Being an entrepreneur and scaling it and putting a great foundation there is another stage. But now I'm in this CEO stage, which for a long time I couldn't even say my title was CEO. Like I was just like, that's weird. I don't know if that really suits me. But it is a completely different job in a sense where you have to be the guiding light for your team. I have the best team and I need to make sure that like they know where we're going. Um, and dollars helps with telling them where we want to go.
yeah,
And but I don't actually put that on my strategic goals for the year. I put more emotional strategic goals. But
yeah,
but we do that because we need to manage our books. When you get to a
sure.
certain stage, you
Yeah.
have to make sure you have healthy cash flow.
I love that you include the emotions because what I'm realizing quick, like I had all these metrics. Okay, when we make it here, when we make it there, and quickly I realized like that's just a moving target. And really it's about, do I feel fulfilled every day? Like, do I feel like I'm making an impact? So I'm just sharing that because some people think once you hit a number, and of course that's important because once you get bigger, you can hire people, you can make more of an impact. So that's important. But as a founder, it was just so interesting how quickly the importance of hitting numbers became kind of like second tier. Even though, of course, it's important, but like what fuels me, I'm just thinking a lot about like what motivates me every day. And I heard you in another interview say like, and this might have been old Cassandra, so please correct me, but you were like, I really love like slower mornings. I don't know if that is still accurate, but I just felt very much seen because I'm in this phase of my life now where I'm just reflecting of like, am I living intentionally? Am I happy? Because that's the most important thing I think for a small business and like where I'm at. Like if I'm not mentally good, it's not going to be good for anyone. So how can I stay like inspired? So I love that you were like, what do slow mornings look like? And that for me is like such a luxury and like huge. Like I used to wake up at 6 and I'm still on my phone, like you're still always connected, but the fact that like I don't do early meetings and I get to choose that and I know that's a luxury is huge, but like you having slow mornings, is that kind of what your days look like, or what does that bring up for you? Because I know that interview was many years ago that I listened to.
Well, I love that you brought this up because I constantly do future journaling on what I think I want my schedule to look like. Oh, I love, so this would be a future journal. Oh, I love my schedule. I start at 10 o'clock and I start emailing. This is not my schedule yet, but that's my
Yeah,
future
sure.
journal. But
Totally.
for me right now, I realize for me, I love doing something for me first thing in the morning. I have to fill my own cup. So around, and I sound a little nutty, maybe to some. I don't know why I'm self-deprecating, but at around like 4:45, I have a 8 sleep in my bed, and it heats up a little bit, so it wakes me up, and in a very gentle way. And so at that time, I do a morning meditation while I'm laying in bed, and that's the
Oh, I love
visualization
that.
meditations that I really love, and it's about 30 minutes. And then at 5:15, I'm out of bed and I go to the gym, and then I get back around 7 o'clock. And that's usually when my daughter wakes up. And I love being slow with her.
Yeah.
We homeschool her. So,
Oh,
we get
cool.
to have the benefit of, not having to rush out the door and pack a lunch. And I feel really grateful for that. But I usually sit with her, and if we have time, we read. I always start the day with like a really big hug, a big, like super, like tight hug. And give her a lot of undivided attention, because I think just one of my favorite things to do is just be like, I'm so happy to see you this morning. And like letting her know, like every day, it's just like one of the most important things is being able to like see her in the morning. So just little things like that I try and implement, and then I'm out the door to work by 8 o'clock. And I get to, and this is like my all-time favorite. So my husband, Jeremy, who you've met, he's my business partner, does all the operations for Kitsch. I didn't talk about him at all on this podcast, but I definitely want
I
to
know.
give
Yeah.
him like so much love. Like he's a genius. He's a genius at what he does here, and an integral part of the Kitsch's growth. He and we get to go on a date every day. We walk to work hand in
I love it.
hand, go to coffee, and that's part of our morning and setting that tone for the day. So I fill my own cup, I fill my
Yeah.
daughter's cup, and then I fill my relationship cup, and then I go to work.
Ugh, I love it. And it goes back to like the micro intention. So, what in the morning satisfies you? It could be different for everyone, and I love like it could be just taking a walk down the street, it could be doing a meditation, but like, what are small things that are going to move the needle for you and like fill your own cup? And I love that you and your husband get to like walk to work and you do that. Like, that's such a perk. Anytime that I could meet a friend in the morning or go on a walk with my husband, it's like fun. I'm like, oh, we're like doing some, it's like so
We're
fun. It sounds so
alive,
basic.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
real
on
life, I
vacation,
literally
yeah.
say yeah, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like a human being." Like, I literally say that. I'm like, "Oh, we're, like, living a normal life of, like, walking outside because I'm so used to just, like, getting into work because it's such a passion, but these little moments for yourself is just so, so powerful, so I appreciate you sharing that, and, yeah, I did not know that you wake up at 4:45. Do you go to sleep early? I mean, I see you text messaging not so early. I mean, a little late. Like, what's your sleep regimen?
Yeah, I'm usually in bed by 9. And I love this app called Wise Guide. I've been doing it since like I was 18 years old, and it's like a sleep hypnosis. And I fall asleep to that. So once I've like set the tone. Like I'm in bed, it's toasty. I usually
Yeah.
fall asleep within like 10 minutes. So when I'm
Amazing.
done, I'm like done. And then I wake up around like 4:45. So, I mean, I think I get enough sleep.
Yeah, no, if you sleep by 9, 10, that's amazing. Like, I'll get into bed at 9 and then kind of mess around till like 10, but my husband's always like, "If you just slept at 9, you would wake up feeling vibrant." And because I need a lot of sleep to function, it's important, I guess, for my just who I am. But yeah, I love that. That makes a lot of sense. And I love the Wise Guide app. Huge fan. I've been listening to it after you told me when I sleep, and even the affirmations, like you mentioned, like when you're doing emails. So I love it. Highly, highly recommend it. And Cassandra, I want to close on one last question because I feel like I could probably talk to you for hours. What do you think is the messy truth about starting a business that a lot of people don't necessarily talk about?
I'm going to start by saying I don't think that this is the only messy truth. I think there's a lot of messy truths. No matter how hard you plan or try and figure things out, it is going to go not how you planned. And you really need to be okay with that. And you can't control it. You have to be open minded to things happening in ways that you never thought possible. And think of it like wonderful thank you rather than, nah, I'm okay. And for me at least, I think that was one of the messy truths is like it's not going to happen how you're thinking, but please be open minded to how we can make that happen for you. You're saying you want to be happy, you're saying you want to have profit margins, you're saying you want to do it this way. Okay, that's what you're telling me. You're also saying you want to work with this retailer, but this retailer is not going to do any of that for you. So we're not going to give you that retailer, okay? We're going to give you this retailer instead, and they're going to be everything you asked for. Maybe not what you were planning, but they're going to be everything you asked for. So just say yes, okay? And so I think that's kind of the messy truth is like just be open-minded to it being very different than what you expected.
That is powerful. Like, seriously, Cassandra, I know there's a lot of messy truths, but it's so true. I feel like in business, things are always going in a different direction. Like, I've only been doing it for 2.5 years, almost 3. And I'm like, oh, everything, it always has like a quick left turn. And
Mm-hmm.
every time I'm like, oh gosh, like this happened, my husband will remind me, like, this is business. Like, if it was easy, everyone would do it. And it's just a good like reframe for me. And hearing you say that, like, it's just nice because you can have really difficult moments. But if you know that that's just part of it, you're like, all right, I got this, and this is just how it is. So you mentioning like being flexible with that, and people can start working on that trait even now before starting a business. Like, that is such an important quality. So, wow, that was major gems. Cassandra, you are amazing. Like, thank you so much for joining us. You're such a bright light. And I know this interview is just going to inspire so many people. So, thank you for being with us.
I really, really appreciate it. I thought it was going to be so overwhelming and I was very nervous about it. But you made it so effortless. And Yasmin, I want to say, and I'm sure many, many people have told you this, but your ability to really hear people and put this space out there for everybody. Even though we all like have product businesses and we are, behind the scenes doing it, the inspiration that you are providing for so many women around the world and holding space for all of us to tell our stories, it is really one of the greatest gifts that you can give everybody. So I thank you so much for doing what you do. We all really appreciate it.
You're going to make me cry. Thank you,
uh,
Cassandra. Oh my gosh. Thank you.
yeah, I mean, it's really remarkable, and I think sometimes we forget the impact that we're making, especially when you do it because it's a passion and you aren't getting a paycheck, to do it. So just know that it's really amazing what you do.
Oh my God. I'm going to take that clip and just remind myself every day in the background about what you're saying, but it truly means the world. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to take that in. Thank you. It means so much.
Thank you for having me.